The text arrived while I was helping James pick out his tie for tomorrow's board meeting. Nothing special, just his standard, under-the-radar Brooks Brothers in Navy. The man worth $4.2 billion dressed like a mid-level accountant, which was exactly how he wanted it. Mom, about Christmas dinner. We think it's better if you skip this year. Christmas is for successful children. Your sister just made partner at Goldman, and your brother's new beach house is being featured in Architectural Digest. We don't want them to feel uncomfortable with your situation. I showed James the message. He paused in his tie selection, reading it twice. Your situation? He asked quietly. You mean your job as Chief Strategy Officer at my company? No, I smiled, straightening his collar. They think I'm still a secretary because that's what I told them 3 years ago. They never asked for updates. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. While my sister Diane posted weekly LinkedIn updates about her junior partner status, and my brother Mark shared daily Instagram stories about his real estate empire, I'd spent the last 3 years helping James build Bytecore Technologies into a $50 billion company. Tomorrow, we'd announce our acquisition of Robertson Systems, a deal I'd orchestrated that would shake the tech industry. But my family didn't know that. They just knew I'd met a nice IT guy at work. Mom, we're sure you understand. Maybe next year if things improve for you. James took my phone, read the new message, and his usual calm expression shifted slightly. We could tell them, he suggested. The deal goes public at 9 a.m. anyway. No, I said, selecting his cufflinks, silver, understated, worth more than my brother's beach house. Let them have their Christmas dinner. Tomorrow will be interesting enough. My relationship with success had always been complicated in the Davidson family. Diane, the eldest, collected degrees like trophies. Harvard MBA, Wharton certificate, Goldman Sachs business cards she accidentally dropped at every family gathering. Mark, the middle child, had leveraged our uncle's connections into a modest real estate business that he marketed as an international property empire, despite owning exactly 3 rental properties in New Jersey. Then there was me, Sarah, the youngest, the quiet one, the one who studied computer science at a state school because it interested me, not because of the name. The one who met James Cooper during a tech conference where he was speaking anonymously about blockchain security. He'd asked me to coffee afterward, impressed by my questions during his session. 3 hours later, we were still talking code architecture and market disruption. A month later, he offered me a job. A year later, he offered me a ring. They're going to feel foolish tomorrow, James said now, watching me adjust his tie. They're going to feel something, I agreed. My phone buzzed again. Diane this time. Sarah, don't take it personally, but I'm bringing the managing partners from Goldman, and Mark's house is being photographed for a spring feature. We just can't have any distractions. Distractions. Last week, I'd finalized a $12 billion acquisition deal in a conference room while Diane was posting about her power lunch with associates. You know, James said thoughtfully, we could move up the announcement. Release it tonight instead of. No, I cut him off gently. Let them have their Christmas dinner. Let them bask in their beach house photos and junior partner business cards. Tomorrow is soon enough. He studied my face. You're too kind to them. I'm not kind. I corrected. I'm patient. My phone lit up with a family group chat. Pictures from the pre-dinner preparations. Mom's table set with her best china. Name cards placed with precision. Diane posing with her Goldman Sachs tote bag strategically visible. Mark lounging in designer clothes, tagging his upcoming magazine feature photographers. James looked over my shoulder at the stream of photos. Your brother's beach house wouldn't qualify as a guest cottage on our property in Malibu, which they don't know we own, I reminded him. Yet, he smiled. Tomorrow's SEC filings include property disclosures. I turned off my phone and helped him with his jacket. Tomorrow he'd be wearing Tom Ford for the press conferences. But tonight he was just James and Brooks Brothers. My nice IT guy, Fiancé, who supposedly shared a rental apartment with me. Last chance, he offered. We could still go to dinner. Watch their faces when the photographer from the Wall Street Journal calls you for comment on the biggest tech acquisition of the year. I kissed him softly. Tomorrow, I said. Tonight, let them feel successful. He nodded, understanding as always. What time does your family usually check their phones in the morning? Mom reads business news at 8 a.m. sharp. Diane has Bloomberg alerts set up. Mark Googles himself hourly. So by 9:15, they'll know exactly who my nice IT guy is, I confirmed, and exactly what their unsuccessful daughter has been doing while they were posting on LinkedIn. James grinned. Merry Christmas, Sarah Davidson, secret tech mogul. Merry Christmas, James Cooper, intentionally terrible dresser. My phone buzzed one final time. Mom again. We've sent you a grocery gift card. For the holidays. Since we know things are tight, I added it to my screenshots folder titled Christmas 2023. Before. Tomorrow would begin a new folder. I was thinking of calling it After. The quiet ones, I've learned, often have the best stories. They just wait for the right moment to tell them. Christmas morning dawned cold and clear in our Palo Alto estate. I sipped coffee from my favorite mug, a chipped one from my first programming competition, while watching James review the final press release on his tablet. Markets open in 2 hours, he said, glancing at his watch. Want to practice your surprise face for when your family calls? I pulled up my phone's Do Not Disturb settings, already configured, only letting through calls from the board and our PR team until noon. The acquisition of Robertson Systems wasn't just another tech deal. It was a paradigm shift. Bytecore's quantum encryption technology, combined with Robertson's AI infrastructure, would transform digital security. The $12 billion deal I'd structured would look like a bargain within months. My family's group chat was already active with Christmas morning photos. Diane in silk pajamas, showcasing gifts from my Goldman team. Mark posing beside a luxury car he probably rented for the shoot. Mom orchestrating the perfect family tableau, minus her youngest daughter. The photographer from Forbes is confirmed for 11 a.m. James's assistant texted. They specifically want shots of both of you in the strategy room where the deal was finalized. I smiled, remembering the countless nights I'd spent in that room, building models and running projections while my siblings posted about power lunches and property viewings. At exactly 8:57 a.m., James took my hand. Ready? I nodded. The press release went live at 9:00 a.m. sharp. Within seconds, every major financial news outlet was running the story. Bytecore Technologies acquires Robertson Systems in $12 billion deal. Tech giant's landmark acquisition orchestrated by CSO Sarah Davidson. James Cooper and Sarah Davidson. Silicon Valley's power couple reshapes tech landscape. My phone exploded. The carefully configured Do Not Disturb held firm, but I could see the notifications piling up. Diane's Bloomberg alerts must have been screaming. The Wall Street Journal's headline was my personal favorite. Sarah Davidson, the silent strategist behind tech's biggest deal of 2023. The article included a photo of me and James from last month's quantum computing conference. Me and Channel, him finally wearing Tom Ford, both of us looking decidedly unlike a secretary and an IT guy. Your mother just tried to call 4 times in 3 minutes, James observed, checking the security desk's message log. And your brother's car just was turned away at the gate. I took another sip of coffee. How long until? My laptop chimed with an email notification. From Mom, marked urgent. Sarah, darling, there must be some confusion about Christmas dinner. Of course you're welcome. We're all so proud of your unexpected success. Please come, bring James. Diane's Goldman partners would love to discuss potential synergies. James read over my shoulder and laughed. Synergies? Yesterday, they sent you a grocery gift card. Another email from Diane. Little sister, why didn't you tell us? I could have introduced you to our tech investment team. Though obviously you didn't need my help. Can we meet for coffee? My managing partner is very interested in Bytecore's potential IPO structure. Mark's attempt was perhaps the most transparent. Sis, just saw the news. Listen, I have this amazing property in Silicon Valley that would be perfect for a Bytecore satellite office. Let's discuss over dinner. The same property he refused to show me 3 months ago because I wouldn't understand the luxury market. Your aunt is on CNBC commenting about how she always knew you were the smart one. James noted, turning up the television volume. Indeed, there was Aunt Patricia, whom I hadn't heard from in years, telling a financial reporter about her brilliant niece Sarah, and how our family has always valued innovation over traditional success metrics. My phone continued its silent vibration as texts and calls piled up. Cousins who'd ignored me at family events. Uncle Robert who'd lectured me about settling for a basic tech job. Even my 3rd grade teacher had somehow found my contact information to congratulate her most promising student. The Forbes photographer will be here in an hour, James reminded me. We should change. I nodded, but didn't move yet. Just watched the notifications accumulate. 3 years of calculated silence leading to this moment. Having regrets? James asked softly. About not telling them sooner. I thought about all the family dinners I'd sat through, the subtle digs about my limited career prospects, the suggestions that I should learn from Diane's ambition or follow Mark's entrepreneurial spirit. No regrets, I said finally. They needed to believe I was unsuccessful to show who they really are. Now they need to believe I'm successful for the same reason. James smiled, understanding as always. And who are you, Sarah Davidson? The same person I was yesterday, I replied, just with better press coverage. My laptop chimed again. Mom had forwarded the family's Christmas dinner photo to me, adding, Look how empty the table looks without you. James's place card is already set. We're serving his favorite wine. What is his favorite wine? I closed the laptop without responding. Let them sit with their empty chairs and hollow successes for a few more hours. The Forbes photographer would capture a different kind of success, one built on substance rather than show. Should we take the Bentley to dinner? James teased. Really make an entrance? No, I smiled. Let's take your old Volvo. Some things should stay understated. After all, true power doesn't need to announce itself. It just needs to be revealed at the right moment. The Forbes photo shoot wrapped at 11:45 a.m. I wore a subtle Brunello Cucinelli suit that cost more than Mark's monthly mortgage. while James finally abandoned his Brooks Brothers for proper billionaire attire. The photographer captured us in the strategy room, surrounded by the evidence of our actual success. Digital displays showing real-time encryption data, market projections, and the morning's soaring stock prices. One more thing, I told the photographer before he left. Could you send a copy of that grocery gift card shot? He grinned, understanding immediately. The final photo in the spread would show the $100 grocery card my mother had sent, casually placed beside the acquisition agreement's $12 billion figure. Petty, James asked when the photographer left. Educational, I corrected. By noon, my family's desperation had reached new heights. Mom had progressed from text to emails to having her assistant call our office. Diane abandoned all pretense of professional distance, sending LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram messages simultaneously. Mark took the direct approach, showing up at Bytecore's headquarters only to be politely informed that Ms. Davidson's schedule is fully booked through January. Your mother's on her fourth attempt to reach our private line, James's head of security reported. Should we continue the standard response? Ms. Davidson is in meetings regarding the Robertson integration. Message noted. Nothing else. The family group chat had transformed into a festival of backpedaling. Mom found these lovely photos from Sarah's coding competitions. Our family has always valued technical innovation. Photo obviously pulled from my old high school website. Diane, remember when baby sis built her first computer? Such a prodigy. I had actually built that computer in secret after they mocked my interest in technology. Mark, my successful sisters, Wall Street and Silicon Valley, tagged with hashtag family legacy, hashtag tech titans, hashtag proud brother. At 2 p.m., the Wall Street Journal released their in-depth coverage of the acquisition. The article didn't just detail the deal, it traced my entire career trajectory, including quotes from MIT professors about my quantum computing research and testimonials from tech leaders about my strategic innovations. Your sister Diane just canceled her dinner with the Goldman partners, James noted, reading updates from our PR team. Apparently, they were more interested in meeting you. I was reviewing the final integration timeline when my father's name finally appeared on my phone. Unlike the others, he sent a single text. I should have listened when you tried to explain your work last Christmas. My pride cost me a year of knowing my daughter's achievements. I'm sorry. It was the only message that gave me pause. At 4 p.m., we left the office for the drive to my family's house. James had agreed to take the Volvo, but he'd also arranged for our head of security to follow discreetly. The Robertson deal had made us more visible than ever, and visibility required precaution. Last chance to skip dinner, James offered as we turned onto my parents' street. We could be in Maui by midnight. I squeezed his hand. They need to see us exactly as we are. No hiding anymore. The house looked exactly as it had every Christmas. Lights perfectly arranged. Wreaths precisely hung. Everything curated for maximum impression. But tonight, the performative perfection felt hollow. Before we could reach the door, it flew open. Mom appeared, dressed in what was clearly a new outfit, price tags possibly still attached. Sarah, darling. Her voice carried across the neighborhood. And James, our distinguished guests. Behind her, I could see the dining room had been completely rearranged. My old place setting, usually tucked in the corner, was now at the head of the table. Diane and Mark hovered awkwardly by the fireplace, their usual confident poses replaced by uncertain fidgeting. Mrs. Davidson, James said smoothly, producing a bottle of wine worth more than her car, Thank you for the invitation. Though I believe it was retracted until about 9:05 this morning. Mom's smile flickered slightly. A ridiculous misunderstanding. We've always sent grocery gift cards to unsuccessful children. I finished quietly. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Diane suddenly became very interested in her phone. Mark studied his imported Italian shoes. Perhaps, I continued, we should address the various texts, posts, and comments from the past few years before we discuss today's sudden change of heart. Mom's perfect hostess mask cracked slightly. Darling, surely we can focus on the wonderful present rather than the present, James interrupted, his billionaire authority showing through, is simply the future's way of dealing with the past. Shall we discuss both over dinner? I pulled out my phone, opened the folder I'd labeled receipts, not financial ones, but screenshots of every dismissive comment, every social media dig, every family chat message questioning my choices. Yes, I agreed, meeting my mother's increasingly nervous gaze. Let's discuss everything. After all, isn't that what successful families do? The professional family photographer Mom had obviously hired for the evening hovered uncertainly by the stairs. In his confusion about the tension, he accidentally captured the perfect shot. The moment when power shifted, when success met truth, when Christmas dinner became a board meeting none of them had prepared for. I sat at the head of the table, James beside me, and smiled. Shall we begin? Dinner was a masterclass in uncomfortable revelations. Mom had clearly Googled tech terminology, peppering her conversation with awkward references to blockchain initiatives and quantum trajectories. Diane kept dropping Goldman Sachs into every sentence until James casually mentioned that Bytecore had declined their investment proposal last quarter. We found their valuation metrics limited, he noted, sipping the wine we brought. Much like their understanding of emerging tech markets. Diane choked slightly on her turkey. Mark's attempt to pitch his Silicon Valley property empire ended when I pulled up satellite images of his 3 New Jersey rentals on my phone. Interesting definition of empire, I observed. Though I suppose every empire falls eventually. Sarah, Mom interjected, perhaps we could focus on your wonderful news instead of past misunderstandings? I set down my fork. You mean the news that was too unsuccessful to merit a Christmas invitation this morning? The photographer Mom had hired shifted uncomfortably in the corner. James gave him a subtle nod, encouraging him to keep shooting. Every awkward moment deserved documentation. The timing of the Robertson acquisition, Dad began, attempting diplomacy, took us all by surprise. Did it? I opened my phone's gallery, like when I tried to explain quantum encryption at last year's Christmas dinner, and Mark said I should leave tech to the professionals and focus on finding a better job. The photos appeared on the dining room's built-in display screen, a feature James's team had quietly installed an hour before dinner. Each image showed a different moment of familial dismissal. Diane mocking my basic tech job at her Goldman Sachs celebration. Mark explaining real estate to me at Thanksgiving. Mom's carefully cropped family photos that minimized my presence. Or perhaps, I continued, advancing through the slideshow, we should discuss the family investment fund that excluded me because, quote, Sarah's career limitations might compromise our portfolio diversity. Mom's perfect hostess smile cracked further. Darling, we simply didn't understand. No, James interrupted politely, you simply didn't ask. Sarah led the quantum computing revolution at Bytecore while you were sending her grocery gift cards. She architected a $12 billion acquisition while you were apologizing for her career choices to country club friends. The silence that followed was expensive enough to fund a startup. The Robertson deal, I added quietly, was finalized in October. I could have told you then, could have watched your opinions change with the stock prices. But I wanted one last honest Christmas. One final revelation of character. Diane's Goldman Sachs portfolio, which she prominently displayed on the side table, seemed to wilt under the weight of context. Bitcore's market cap, James noted casually, exceeded Goldman's total tech investment portfolio this morning. Interesting metrics on success, wouldn't you say, Diane? Mark attempted recovery. Well, family is more important than success, I finished. Fascinating perspective from someone who uninvited me this morning for not meeting the family's success threshold. The photographer captured it all. Mom's frozen smile, Diane's wilting confidence, Mark's deflating bravado. Christmas dinner became a shareholder meeting where every past dividend of disdain paid out in uncomfortable returns. I have a proposition, I said finally, after the creme brulee had been served and mostly ignored. A family revaluation, if you will. They leaned forward, desperate for redemption opportunities. From now on, we measure success by substance, not show. Achievements by impact, not announcements. Family by support, not status. I met each of their eyes. Those are my terms for continued investment in these relationships. Of course, Mom agreed quickly. Family is everything. No, I corrected gently. Family is what we build through actions, not what we claim through blood. I've built something real while you were building appearances. The question is, what will you build now? James checked his watch. The Asian markets opened soon. We should head back. We stood to leave, the photographer capturing one final shot. Me in my understated designer suit, James in his billionaire's casual wear, standing against the backdrop of my family's carefully curated success theater. Sarah, Dad called as we reached the door. Your message this morning, about listening. I'm ready to hear about your work now. Really hear it. It was the only moment that it felt genuine. I handed him my card, not the Bitcore executive one, but my personal email. Start with understanding, I suggested. Success usually follows. In the car, James took my hand. Proud of you. For the Robertson deal. For giving them a path to earn trust rather than buy it. My phone buzzed with notifications from the Asian markets. Bitcore's stock was soaring. The Robertson integration was exceeding projections. Real success, measured in innovation rather than Instagram posts. Next Christmas, James mused, should we invite them to the Malibu house? I thought about Mom's desperate scramble to rearrange dinner, Diane's deflated Goldman Sachs references, Mark's crumbling real estate empire claims. Next Christmas, I decided, we'll let them earn their invitations. Success should be achieved, not assumed. He smiled, understanding as always. As we drove away from my family's carefully curated world, the real one expanded before us, measured not in social media metrics or country club status, but in the quiet power of proven worth. Sometimes the greatest success lies not in what you achieve, but in who you remain while achieving it. I stayed true to myself while they chased appearances. In the end, that made all the difference.
I'm an 18-year-old young man, and throughout my life, my parents held exceedingly high expectations for me. They saw me as a representation of their status in society and aimed for me to excel in every aspect. From my earliest years, I felt the weight of their demands as they pushed me to achieve straight A's, win awards, join clubs, engage in sports, and participate in various volunteer activities. My life seemed to be meticulously planned from the moment I entered kindergarten. They insisted that I pursue a course I despised at a prestigious university of their choosing. Their motivation wasn't driven by my future success or financial stability. Instead, it was all about showcasing me as their accomplishment. Throughout my 18 years under their roof, they displayed no interest in my passions, hobbies, or dreams. They never bothered to inquire about my opinions, feelings, or thoughts. Concepts like freedom, privacy, and respect were nothing more than distant dreams in my life. In summary, my parents exerted complete control over every facet of my existence. They imposed strict academic standards, leaving me with no semblance of a social life. They made me dedicate countless hours to studying, even on weekends and holidays. Tutors and coaches were constantly monitoring my progress and skill development. Any mistake or failure resulted in harsh punishments, including public shaming in front of relatives and the few friends I had. Upon graduating from high school, my parents compelled me to apply for the course and university they had predetermined. They framed it as my sole option, denying me any say in the matter. They stressed that following their plan and making them proud was my duty and obligation, threatening severe consequences if I couldn't gain admission easily. They openly stated that university admission held more significance to them than my well-being and life itself. My worth and gratitude were measured solely by my ability to secure admission there. Unfortunately, their chosen course didn't align with my passion for the arts, which they were entirely unaware of. When they discovered this, their anger and disappointment were palpable. They accused me of squandering their time, money, and efforts, and claimed that I had shattered their reputation, hopes, and dreams. They treated me as though I were a criminal, with my father labeling me a failure and a disgrace. The repercussions they had threatened soon became a reality. As soon as they learned of my failure to gain admission, they disowned me and banished me from their lives. They handed me the keys to an old, dilapidated van and instructed me to leave, expressing their desire never to see or hear from me again. In that moment, it became evident that my parents had severed all ties with me. I didn't attempt to explain, apologize, or plead my case. Instead, I simply climbed into the van and drove away. Uncertain of my destination and feeling a mix of hurt, anger, and betrayal, I also experienced an overwhelming sense of freedom and relief, finally liberated from the oppressive grip of my parents. I roamed the streets in search of a place to rest and sleep, eventually stumbling upon a campground where I encountered a group of individuals living in RVs and vans. They extended a warm and friendly welcome, inviting me to join their bonfire and barbecue gathering. As we shared our stories, I confided in them with the unvarnished truth about my situation. In return, they offered empathy and shared their own experiences of leaving behind homes, jobs, or relationships for various reasons. Each had a unique story to tell, some fleeing from something, others chasing dreams, and a few simply seeking new horizons. Nevertheless, they all shared a common theme. They were living life on their own terms. Their acceptance and sense of value provided me with a newfound sense of belonging. Over the course of the next month, we stuck together, enjoying adventures and exploring the local area. We hiked, fished, swam, and indulged in games, all while engaging in lively conversations, laughter, songs, and dances. Together, we relished in food, drinks, relaxation, and mutual support. We also pooled our resources to tackle practical challenges like vehicle repairs, resource hunting, making plans, and ensuring our safety. Moreover, this newfound community helped me recognize the toxicity of my parents' behavior and encouraged me to pursue my interests and passions. They wholeheartedly supported my quest to find my own path and goals, inspiring me with their tales of overcoming adversity to achieve success. That month spent with them was truly transformative. However, during this period, my parents made no effort to reach out to me. The sole family member I had contact with was my grandmother. But my parents had cautioned me not to reveal my homeless situation to her, leading me to fabricate stories about my well-being. My grandmother had always held a special place in my heart, being the only family member to treat me with kindness and respect. She showed me affection, gave me compliments, and stood up for me against my parents' harsh and unreasonable methods of raising me. She valiantly defended me from their cruel criticisms and unjust punishments, providing solace during my times of distress. Despite residing apart from us, she financially supported my parents when they faced financial difficulties, frequently sending me money and supplies. She would call me at least once a week, and her spacious home always had a room set aside for me. She had urged me on multiple occasions to move in with her, and was well aware of my passions, offering unwavering encouragement and compliments for who I was. She never missed an opportunity to boost my confidence, acknowledging my intelligence, talents, and handsomeness. She recognized my potential and was willing to help me seize opportunities. Her love for me was unconditional, a stark contrast to my parents who would often deceive her about my health and misappropriate her money. They eagerly awaited her inheritance, planning their retirement around the belief that they would receive a substantial sum of money and property from her. Before expelling me from their lives, my father had issued a stern warning, insisting that I mustn't divulge anything to my grandmother, knowing full well that she would stand by my side. I chose to withhold the truth from my grandmother because I didn't want to burden her with the knowledge that my parents had disowned me. I didn't disclose the fact that they had forced me out of their house, providing me with an old van and cutting off all contact with me. I kept up this deception not only due to my father's threats, but also because I wanted to shield her from worry, knowing that she was elderly and frail. When my grandmother would call, I continued to lie about my well-being out of love for her. However, I realized that I couldn't deceive her indefinitely. After a month of living outside in the van and making new friends, I decided to come clean and share the truth with her. I mustered the courage to call her and confess everything that had transpired. By the end of our conversation, tears were streaming down my face, and my grandmother, too, was weeping. She did her best to console me and expressed her anger toward my parents, labeling them as heartless, selfish, ignorant, foolish, abusive, and neglectful. She immediately invited me to her home and insisted that I stay with her. Upon seeing me, she embraced me tightly, determined to care for and protect me. She even apologized for my parents' actions, but I was hesitant to impose on her by staying in her home. She wouldn't hear of it and wouldn't let me leave. First, she contacted her lawyer and updated her will, naming me as the sole heir to all her property. She then called my father and informed him that she had learned about everything, reading her will aloud to him. She declared that everything she owned belonged to me and admonished them for their terrible mistake and shameful behavior. She made it clear that she would cut them off from her inheritance, which was a significant blow to my parents, given their financial struggles and their reliance on my grandmother's wealth and property to maintain their lavish lifestyle and social standing. They had always expected to inherit everything from her upon her passing and had taken her generosity for granted. Subsequently, my father reached out to me, followed by my mother. They apologized, expressed regret for their actions, professed their love for me, and claimed to miss me. They wanted me to return home and promised to change. However, I saw through their intentions, recognizing that they were only trying to manipulate the situation to regain access to my grandmother's assets. In response, I laughed at their pleas and hung up the calls. I questioned whether I was being unreasonable for not granting my parents another chance. Despite my desire to continue my journey, my grandmother was opposed to it. She inquired about my academic aspirations and what I wanted to do with my life. My grandmother was well aware of my passion for art, so she suggested that I enroll in a community college in her locality. Despite my parents bombarding my phone with texts of apology, I hadn't made up my mind about forgiving them. My grandmother, however, made it clear that even if I chose to forgive them, she could never do the same for the harm they had caused me. 2 days ago, my mother sent me a photo of my father, claiming he was severely ill but refusing to go to the hospital unless I visited him. Both my grandmother and I sensed deceit in her message, but we decided to investigate. My grandmother, accompanied by her lawyer, planned to drive to my parents' home. If things went awry, she intended to intervene and rescue me. Following our plan, my grandmother visited my parents' home yesterday. Once inside, my mother snatched my phone, and my father locked me in a room. I had instructed my grandmother to wait for my signal, but when she didn't hear from me, she bravely approached the house with her lawyer. Faced with no other choice, my parents had to open the door. My grandmother stepped in, saving me from their clutches. While leaving, my parents attempted to defend themselves, but my grandmother silenced them with her resolve. She intends to take legal action against them. I've decided to cut them out of my life completely. I'm fortunate to have a grandmother like her by my side. Many people dealing with toxic parents have no escape, but I am grateful to have her support. I will take care of her. She's a precious gem. Hey, everyone, I'm contemplating something regarding my cheating fiancé, and I'm seeking your input on whether I'm in the right. Let me share my story with you so you can weigh in. Creating a throwaway account for obvious reasons. I'm a 26-year-old male who decided to propose to my girlfriend of 4 years, a 24-year-old woman. I popped the question 6 months ago, believing that marriage was the natural next step after our healthy 5-year relationship. I was financially stable and confident in my ability to provide for us. However, my perception of our relationship crumbled when I proposed. My girlfriend is incredibly social and active on social media. As I was taking pictures of her with the engagement ring, I noticed notifications from a guy popping up on her phone. Curious, I discreetly checked the messages and discovered that she was cheating on me. Based on their conversation, it was evident that she had been to his place multiple times, and he was eagerly anticipating her next visit. Although I'm not one to invade someone's privacy, I felt compelled to dig deeper. Considering her lack of tech-savvy skills, it was easy for me to access her laptop. She consistently used the same password for most of her accounts. Once, I gained access to her laptop, and the revelations were shocking. I wasn't prepared for what I discovered. My ex had been frequenting a local sex club, which had led to her making a multitude of new friends who had seemingly been more intimately involved with her than I had ever been. At the time of my investigation, she was engaged in conversations with about 7 men. From their exchanges, it was painfully clear that she had spent intimate moments with them. In many of these chats, she demeaned my performance in bed compared to theirs, claiming they were far superior. Reading those words shattered my heart. The person I had loved for the past 5 years had been cheating on me for the better part of 3 years. The weight of this realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I felt an overwhelming hatred for her, an emotion I couldn't adequately describe. I never thought I was capable of such intense feelings of loathing towards someone I had loved so deeply. I couldn't believe I was entertaining thoughts of harm towards someone I still cared for. That's when I decided on a course of action. I wanted to inflict mental and emotional distress upon her. Perhaps this makes me a morally questionable person, but I was determined to make her suffer the consequences of her actions. I contemplated my decision, slept on it, and ultimately committed to the plan. I pretended that everything was normal between us. I knew about her infidelity, but I didn't let on that I was aware of her cheating. I put on a facade, acting as if everything was fine. We both lied to each other, and I observed her with a fake smile whenever I saw her enthusiastically chatting on her phone, all the while wondering if she was betraying me again. It was torment living with her, but I believed that my revenge would be worthwhile. The plan was straightforward. I had no intention of marrying her. I allowed her to meticulously plan the wedding, knowing full well that it would be a solo affair since I had no intention of showing up. I accompanied her on trips to select wedding details, like flowers and decorations, though I had no intention of paying for anything. I even suggested that I would match her honeymoon expenses with whatever she spent on the wedding. She was delighted, naively unaware that she was racking up a significant bill. Her innocence brought a cynical smile to my face, even in the face of this elaborate revenge plan. I understood that my actions were cruel, but in my mind, I believed she deserved it. I continued to monitor her affairs, and unsurprisingly, she was still engaging in infidelity. Knowing this made it easier for me to witness her financial downfall over a wedding she would be attending alone. With our wedding just 2 days away, I found myself experiencing a touch of stage fright. I couldn't help but question if I would be considered a bad person if I followed through with my plan. After all, she was still cheating on me. Just 30 minutes ago, I confirmed that she was going to meet one of her partners at a bachelorette party. I had discussed my dilemma with my best man, and he believed that my actions were cruel when I could have simply broken up with her. Hello, everyone. I want to express my gratitude for your support and checking in on me. I didn't anticipate that you would appreciate my idea as much as you did. Your support means a lot to me. Now, on to the update you've been waiting for. I decided to go with the suggestion a few of you provided in my direct messages, which was to expose her as the cheater she was. And so, that's precisely what I did. I asked my best man to play a video containing all the screenshots of the chats I had gathered over the months, along with those pictures. I included a brief explanatory message to ensure everyone understood that I would not be showing up for the wedding. I followed through with my revenge plan and told her that I would have an extended bachelor's party and return the night before the wedding. But we both knew I had no intention of returning. I didn't inform my family about this because my parents are close to her, and I didn't want her to find out. Only my best man was privy to my decision not to attend the wedding. As the wedding time approached, my phone was inundated with calls from both my parents and my cheating fiancé. She kept calling repeatedly until the calls abruptly stopped, presumably when the video was played in front of all the guests. Since then, I haven't received any calls from her, and my parents have tried to reach me once or twice, but I haven't answered. I'm reluctant to respond and be forced to explain why I kept my struggles hidden from them. I stayed in touch with my best man, who provided all the details about how the events unfolded. He described the humiliation she felt as the screenshots were displayed, revealing her sexting someone other than me. I had anticipated feeling a sense of satisfaction upon hearing the news, but the emotions I experienced far exceeded my expectations. Hello, everyone. The past 2 days have been quite intense. I finally returned home, which used to be the apartment we shared. The first thing that struck me was the absence of her belongings. It turned out she had moved out during these past 2 days. She left numerous voicemails on my phone, pleading for me to reconnect with her. In some, she sounded angry that I had abruptly exited her life without offering any closure. Yet in the same messages, she would break down, begging for forgiveness for her betrayal. I recognized that her words were driven by her longing for the comfort of our relationship, but I couldn't bring myself to fall for her act again. I had devoted years to her, pouring my heart and soul into our relationship. What had I received in return? Heartbreak. I consider myself fortunate to have discovered her infidelity before marrying her, but it still pains me. I wish I hadn't found myself in this situation. In the following weeks, various events unfolded, and that's why I couldn't respond earlier. My ex decided she wanted me to cover all the expenses she had incurred for her wedding since she hadn't received any refunds and was displeased about it. She took me to court, and after weeks of not seeing each other, we finally faced each other. While I can't provide many details due to the ongoing court case, I didn't have to pay her a substantial amount. It was around 20% of what she had spent, and that was pretty much it. I had assumed that seeing her would evoke no emotions, but I was wrong. I felt terrible in her presence. I couldn't fathom how she thought it was acceptable to hurt me the way she did. I had wanted her by my side forever, while she decided that sleeping with others was a preferable choice. Now somehow I was painted as the villain for seeking retribution. I don't comprehend why she views my decision to distance myself and not forgive her as wrong. In my eyes, and in yours, I haven't committed a wrongdoing, and that's what truly matters to me. Honestly, this will be the final update I provide on this post. I have no desire to revisit the memories of this incident ever again. To the person offering advice, I appreciate your perspective, and you're right. I deserve better than what she has given me. As for exposing her secrets at the wedding, I've thought about it, but I've decided against it. I want to move past this chapter of my life. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into today's stories. Remember, if you have a story of your own that you'd like to share, please email it to the address provided in the description below.
The roast was getting cold, but nobody at the Miller family dinner table seemed to notice. They were too busy dissecting my latest failure. A bank teller, Michael? Really? My father's voice dripped with disdain as he cut into his meat. 4 years at Stanford Business School to become a bank teller. I took another sip of wine. letting the expensive Bordeaux, which I'd brought but nobody had acknowledged, roll across my tongue. At 32, I'd learned that silence was often the best response to these Sunday dinner interrogations. Your brother's making partner at his law firm, Mom chimed in, right on cue. And your sister just closed that huge real estate deal in Miami. Ah, yes, the golden children. James with his prestigious law degree, and Sarah with her thriving real estate empire. The pride of the Miller family. It's actually personal banking advisor, I corrected quietly, knowing it wouldn't matter. Dad's fork clattered against his plate. Oh, excuse me, personal banking advisor, like that's any better. He leaned forward, his face flushing with familiar disappointment. Do you know what people say? Their faces when they ask what my Stanford graduate son is doing with his life. I did know. I knew exactly what people said, especially the board members of First Atlantic Bank, the institution where I worked as a supposedly humble advisor. The same board members who had no idea that I actually owned 71% of the bank through a complex web of holding companies and investment vehicles. Robert, maybe we should, Mom started, but Dad was on a roll. You're nothing but a disappointment, he sneered, jabbing his fork in my direction. All that potential wasted. We spent a fortune on your education. And for what? I thought about the document sitting in my office downtown. The loan application my parents had submitted to save their struggling manufacturing business. The same application that would cross my desk tomorrow morning, though they had no idea I controlled the bank's major lending decisions. I'm doing fine, Dad, I said softly. Fine, he barked out a laugh. You call this fine? Living in that tiny apartment, driving that 10-year-old car, working as a glorified clerk. The tiny apartment was actually a penthouse I owned through a shell corporation. The old car was deliberately chosen to maintain my cover. But they didn't need to know that. Not yet. At least James and Sarah had ambition. Mom added, shaking her head. They wanted to make something of themselves. I smiled, remembering the meeting I'd had last week with the partners of Wilson and Gray, the law firm where James was supposedly about to make partner. I'd acquired the firm 6 months ago, another quiet addition to my growing financial empire. The partners had been quite clear that my brother was actually nowhere near partnership track. You know what your problem is? Dad continued, warming to his favorite subject, my failures. You never think big picture. Never take risks. Always playing it safe with your little banking job. If he only knew, the little banking job was just the tip of the iceberg. Over the past decade, I'd built a financial services empire worth billions, all while maintaining the facade of a modest banking career. First Atlantic was just one of 17 banks I controlled across the country, along with investment firms, real estate companies, and yes, one prestigious law firm. Maybe you're right, I said, standing up. The weight of the moment, knowing what tomorrow would bring, made it hard to maintain my usual passive expression. Where are you going? Mom demanded. We're not finished with dinner. I think we are. I picked up my coat. Thanks for the lovely evening. Running away again, Dad scoffed. Just like always. You're nothing but a disappointment. Yes, I heard you the first dozen times. I paused at the door, looking back at my family. You might want to keep your phone handy tomorrow. I hear banks can be pretty strict about loan applications these days. The confusion on their faces almost made me smile. Almost. Later that night, in my real office, the one that occupied the top floor of a downtown high-rise, I reviewed their loan application one final time. The business was in worse shape than they'd admitted. Without this loan, the company my father had spent 30 years building would collapse within months. My phone buzzed. James calling, right on schedule. "Little brother," he started, his voice artificially cheerful. "You left to dinner rather abruptly. Did I miss another recitation of your great legal victories?" I asked mildly, signing off on a different acquisition. This one worth $300 million. "Don't be like that. Dad's just concerned about you. We all are." "Living so?" modestly. I thought about the document I'd received that morning, showing that James had been quietly borrowing money from the firm to cover his gambling debts, the same firm I now owned. "Your concern is touching," I replied. "How's the partnership coming along?" A pause. "It's progressing. These things take time." "Indeed they do." I smiled at the irony. "Say, didn't you handle some work for First Atlantic Bank a few years ago?" Another pause, longer this time. "Yes." "Why?" "Just curious. Give my best to Mom and Dad. Tomorrow should be interesting." I hung up before he could respond, turning back to the loan application. With a single signature, I could save or destroy my family's legacy. The question was, after years of their constant criticism and dismissal, did I want to? The sun was setting over the city skyline as I made my decision. Tomorrow would change everything, for better or worse. The carefully constructed facade I'd maintained for a decade would finally crack. I picked up my phone and sent a text to Janet, my real executive assistant. "Execute Protocol Omega. It's time." Her response was immediate. "All set for tomorrow, sir. The documents are prepared." I walked to the window, watching the city lights blink to life one by one. In 12 hours, my family would learn the truth about their disappointment of a son. The bank teller who secretly controlled their financial fate. The irony would be spectacular. Monday morning dawned bright and clear. I arrived at First Atlantic's headquarters early, watching from my private elevator as employees filed into the building. None of them knew that the quiet personal banking advisor on the 3rd floor was actually their boss. At precisely 9:00 a.m., Janet activated Protocol Omega. Every major executive at First Atlantic received an email announcing an emergency board meeting. Simultaneously, my family's loan application was escalated to priority status. My phone buzzed. Dad calling. Right on schedule. "Michael? The bank just called about our loan application. They want us to come in immediately." I could hear the tension in his voice. The manufacturing company was his life's work, and its survival hinged on this loan. "Really?" I kept my voice neutral. "That seems unusually fast." "They said something about special instructions from the owner. Do you know anything about this?" "I'm just a bank teller, remember? I couldn't resist the small dig, but I'll see you when you get here." An hour later, I watched through my office's one-way glass as my parents were escorted into the building. They looked smaller somehow, more vulnerable than during last night's dinner. Mom was clutching her handbag like a shield. Dad's shoulders, usually squared with confidence, were tight with anxiety. "They're here," Janet announced through the intercom, along with Mr. James Miller and Miss Sarah Miller. Ah, they'd called in the successful siblings for support. Perfect. "Have them wait in the main conference room," I instructed. "Make sure the board members are there first." I gave them 20 minutes to stew. Through the security feeds, I watched my family interact with First Atlantic's top executives. Dad was trying to maintain his usual authoritative demeanor, but I could see the nervous tapping of his fingers. James was attempting to network, unaware that every person in that room now reported to his disappointment of a brother. At 10:30 sharp, I pressed the button that would begin the revelation. The conference room's massive screens lit up with the bank's ownership structure, a complex web of holding companies and investment vehicles that all led back to one name, Michael Miller. The door opened, and I walked in wearing a Tom Ford suit that cost more than Dad's car. The board members immediately stood, a chorus of "Good morning, Mr. Miller," filling the room. The look on my family's faces was priceless. "Hello, Dad," I said quietly. "Sleep well after dinner last night." He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. No words came out. "Michael?" Mom's voice was barely a whisper. What is this?" "This," I gestured around the magnificent conference room, "is my bank. One of 17, actually, but who's counting?" James had gone pale, likely remembering all the legal work he'd done for First Atlantic. Work that had crossed my desk without him knowing. "That's impossible." Sarah finally found her voice. "You're a bank teller." "Personal banking advisor," I corrected with a smile. "It's a useful cover when you want to build something without family interference." I sat at the head of the table, enjoying the stunned silence. "Now, about that loan application." Dad's face was flushing, but whether with anger or embarrassment, I couldn't tell. "All this time?" "Yes, all this time. While you were calling me a disappointment, mocking my little banking job, comparing me to my more successful siblings, I let the words hang in the air. I was building an empire." I nodded to Janet, who distributed folders to everyone present. "Inside, you'll find some interesting documents. The true state of Wilson and Gray Law Firm, which I acquired 6 months ago." I looked at James, who had gone even paler, including certain financial irregularities that the partners were kind enough to bring to my attention. James slumped in his chair. Mom gasped. "You'll also find details about the recent collapse of the Miami real estate deal that Sarah's been bragging about." I turned to my sister, the one that fell through because the financing was suddenly withdrawn by my bank. Sarah's perfectly manicured hands trembled as she opened the folder. And finally, I focused on my parents, a complete analysis of your manufacturing company. The missed payments, the hidden debts, the deferred maintenance. Everything you conveniently left off the loan application. "We can explain," Dad started, but I held up a hand. "No need. I've had my people analyzing the business for months. We know exactly what's wrong and what it would take to fix it." The silence in the room was deafening. Board members tried to look anywhere but at my family's humiliation. "Why?" Mom's question was soft but clear. "Why hide all this from us?" I leaned forward, choosing my words carefully. "Do you remember when I first started at Stanford? When I tried to tell you about my ideas for algorithmic trading and digital banking?" Dad shifted uncomfortably. He remembered. "You said I was dreaming too big, that I needed to be practical, follow the traditional path. Like James and Sarah." I smiled without humor. "So I decided to build something on my own. No family connections, no expectations, no constant comparisons. Just pure merit." "And the bank teller job?" Sarah asked. "Gave me insights you can't get from the top floor. Every major executive in my company starts at entry level, though they don't know I'm the one requiring it." I opened my own folder, pulling out a single document. "Now, about your loan." Dad straightened, his business instincts taking over. "Given our Relationship, I assume. That's not how I run my banks. I cut him off. Every loan application is evaluated on its merits. I slid the document across the table. Your company needs more than just a $2 million loan. It needs complete restructuring. They stared at the document. A comprehensive rescue plan that would save the business but require them to give up significant control. The choice is yours, I continued. Accept the plan, save the company, but work under my bank's oversight, or decline and try your luck elsewhere. Though I should mention we've acquired most of your other lending options over the past year. The boardroom fell silent as my family grappled with their new reality. The son they dismissed as a disappointment now held their financial fate in his hands. I stood up, straightening my jacket. Take some time to discuss it. Janet will show you to a private room. Oh, and Dad? He looked up, still shell-shocked. About that Stanford education you paid for? Consider this its return on investment. The next few weeks were a study in shifting power dynamics. My family's carefully constructed hierarchy, with me at the bottom, had been shattered, replaced by something none of us quite knew how to navigate. Dad accepted the restructuring plan, of course. He didn't have a choice, not if he wanted to save his company. But watching him sign the papers, his hand trembling slightly, I felt no triumph, just a strange emptiness where satisfaction should have been. You could have told us, he said quietly after the signatures were done. All these years, would it have made a difference? I asked. Or would you have just found new ways to be disappointed? He had no answer for that. The changes came swiftly after that. My team of financial experts descended on Dad's company, implementing the restructuring plan with surgical precision. Every inefficiency was identified, every wasteful process eliminated. It was painful to watch him struggle with losing control, but necessary for the company's survival. James was the first to try damage control. He showed up at my real office, not the modest third-floor workspace I'd used as cover, a week after the revelation. Look, about all those things I said, he started, fidgeting with his Italian silk tie. About my wasted potential, my lack of ambition, my embarrassing career choices. I kept my voice neutral as I signed off on a billion-dollar acquisition. I was wrong, obviously. He'd attempted a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Who would have thought my little brother would end up owning my law firm? Speaking of which, I pulled out a file. Let's discuss your gambling debts. He paled. Michael, I can explain. No need. The firm's forensic accountants have explained everything quite thoroughly. $300,000 borrowed from client accounts. That's a serious ethical violation, James. Please, he whispered. You can't report this. My career would be over. I finished. You'd be disbarred. Probably face criminal charges. I let him sweat for a moment before continuing. Fortunately, the money has been repaid, anonymously, and the accounts reconciled. The partners have agreed to keep this quiet, provided you accept a transfer to our Singapore office. Singapore, he stammered. Fresh start. Away from the casinos. Take it or take your chances with the ethics board. He took it, of course. Sometimes help comes in the form of forced choices. Sarah was next, arriving in a storm of designer perfume and wounded pride. You deliberately sabotaged my deal, she accused, pacing my office. No, I protected my bank from a high-risk investment. I corrected. The Miami market is overvalued, and your numbers didn't add up. Any competent banker would have made the same decision. But I'm your sister. exactly why I had to be extra careful about any appearance of favoritism. I met her gaze steadily. You want to be taken seriously in real estate. Build something real, not just a house of cards propped up by family connections. She left angry, but returned a week later with a solid proposal for a mixed-use development. I had my team review it thoroughly. No special treatment, and when it proved viable, approved the funding. Sometimes tough love is the best investment. Mom was the hardest to deal with. She showed up at my penthouse one evening, taking in the spectacular view with tears in her eyes. All those times I worried about you, she said softly. Wondering if you'd ever make something of yourself, if you'd ever live up to your potential. And all along, I was exceeding it, I replied, just not in the way you expected. Why the deception? Why let us think you were struggling? I poured us both a glass of wine, the same Bordeaux they'd ignored at that last family dinner. Remember when I was 10 and I won the state math championship? She nodded. Instead of celebrating, you and Dad immediately started talking about which competitions I should enter next, which achievements would look best for college applications. Every success just created pressure for the next one. We wanted you to excel, she protested. No, you wanted me to excel your way, on your terms, following your path. I sipped my wine. So I chose to build something away from all that pressure. Something that would succeed or fail based solely on its own merits. And now that we know, now we learn to be a family without the constant measuring and comparing, without the need to prove anything. The changes in our family dynamics came slowly, but steadily. Dad's company, under professional management, began to thrive. He gradually learned to be proud of its success without needing to control every decision. James found unexpected fulfillment in Singapore, away from his old enablers and the pressure of living up to his own hype. He even met someone, a corporate lawyer who helped him face his gambling addiction. Sarah's development project succeeded on its own merits, teaching her the satisfaction of earning success rather than manipulating connections. She started mentoring young women in real estate, sharing lessons learned the hard way. Mom struggled the longest with our new reality, but eventually found her way to a different kind of maternal pride, one based on acceptance rather than expectations. As for me, I stepped out of the shadows, taking a more public role in my companies. The story of the secret banking empire made headlines for a while, but the media eventually moved on to newer sensations. 6 months after that fateful loan meeting, we had another Sunday dinner. Not at my parents' house this time, but at my penthouse. The conversation was different. Less comparison, more connection. Less judgment, more understanding. I have to ask, Dad said as we finished dessert, do you ever regret it? The years of hiding your success. I thought about it, looking around at my family. James, relaxed and healthy after months of therapy. Sarah, discussing her latest project with genuine passion rather than bragging. Mom, finally learning to listen instead of evaluate. No, I said finally. We all needed to learn some hard lessons about success, about family, about what really matters. And what really matters? Mom asked softly. Not the size of your bank account or the impressiveness of your title, I replied, but the integrity of your work and the authenticity of your relationships. Later that night, after everyone had left, I stood at my window looking out over the city. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad. Thank you for saving my company and for teaching me what real success looks like. I smiled, thinking about the long journey from disappointment to this moment. Sometimes the greatest success isn't in proving others wrong, but in helping them grow right alongside you. My phone buzzed again. Janet, with news about another potential acquisition. Tomorrow, I'd go back to building my empire. But tonight, I savored something rarer. A family finally learning to see each other clearly, without the distorting lens of expectations. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's the wisdom to know when to stop keeping score and start building bridges, even if those bridges are built with billion-dollar banks.